Hi, everybody. This is your pastoral update for Wednesday, the 20th of May. So glad to be able to come to you again with a little bit of a teaser this time. This past Sunday, we considered what what persons of faith can learn from Israel's experience of exile during the time of the Babylonian exile. And I mentioned at the beginning of that sermon that perhaps the other great set of circumstances or conditions in the life and history of Israel that we could learn from during this pandemic time was her wilderness journey. After being freed from slavery in Egypt, led by Moses through the wilderness on their way to the Promised Land, the searing period of 40 years where they wandered and wondered. The 16th chapter of Exodus reminds us that at one particular point in that journey, the people had grown very frustrated. They were afraid, they were tired, worn out, concerned about their lives and concerned about their future. And they feared for hunger, they feared for thirst. And they even remembered, as we often do, they rewrote some history and were remembering rather fondly their days of slavery, saying at least by the flesh pots in Egypt we had food to eat. And so they murmured with Moses. And God heard their cry and was continuing to lead them during their time of wilderness, their wilderness journey. And so God said to Moses, "Tell the people that I will provide for them." And sure enough, he provided quail that covered the camp in the evenings. They were able to capture and eat the quail. And then God also provided something that the name literally means, what is it? Manna means, what is it? And it appeared every morning, a fine, flaky, frost-like substance covered the ground, and the people were able to gather it up and use it to make bread to eat. But God instructed the people and said, "Only gather enough for you and your family for one day. I will provide for you each day. Trust me. Hear my word and trust what I'm telling you, and trust in my willingness and my love for you, that I will care for you day by day." And the people found this to be true. They would gather enough for their families, and anytime they gathered too much, the food would spoil by the next day. Anyone who tried to hoard the manna found that it would go bad. And so they learned all the more painfully to trust in what God was telling them, that God would show them the way through their hunger, through their fear, through their wilderness journey. Now there's a little teaser for my next sermon. We'll consider that on May 31st in our online worship service. Meanwhile, I'm happy to tell you that Wendy Barnes will be bringing a wonderful message to us this Sunday, May 24th. And speaking of Wendy, I want you to remember what we've kind of announced in all of the hubbub over my new appointment and Jim Watford's new appointment. Let's remember that Wendy remains with us, and not only does she remain with us for another year of service, I hope many years of service, that she also has reached a particular milestone in her ministry and has been approved by the Board of Ordained Ministry of the Western North Carolina Annual Conference to be brought into the conference as an elder in full connection. And so that will be celebrated this summer at one or both of two occasions. The clergy will be having an online gathering for our clergy session on Thursday, June 18th. And then there will be planned at this point an in-person gathering, if that doesn't change, on August 8th for both clergy and lay delegates, a one-day meeting in Hickory, North Carolina. So I wanted you to know of those upcoming times so you can be in prayer for our annual conference, for me and Jim as we consider new appointments, for David Green as he comes to be your new pastor, senior pastor, and also for Wendy as she continues in service along with the rest of our staff as they continue in service. I invite your prayers for our staff as they are so instrumental in this transition that's coming up. So please do be mindful of that as we go forward. Now, two things you're going to hear a lot more about in the very near future. One is more information about David Green, as he and his wife both are making a change in ministry to our area. His wife Willis is also a pastor, and she'll be serving First United Methodist Church in High Point. And so they'll be making that move very soon, and you'll be hearing more about David very soon. The other thing that we have, of course, under consideration is how we're going to approach June and beyond with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions we're facing. We're waiting any day now for word from the governor of North Carolina. We're watching to see what's going on in other states, but right now we're paying special attention to the word that's coming to us from the Center for Disease Control, from the state of North Carolina, and from our Western North Carolina Annual Conference. Our bishop continues to give us updates, and other leaders are with him in making recommendations, and we'll be following those very, very strictly. So we have under consideration a plan for June that looks kind of like May, and we're going to be sharing more about that as church leaders consider and we get our heads together on what that may mean, and then we'll see where we go in July and August. But that's going to be coming out very soon. Look for something in the newsletter next week, as well as in this pastoral update next week on the 27th. So that's kind of it for now. I invite you to continue to doing the things you're doing. Look out for each other, offer care to each other, make phone calls, trade emails and text messages. Help keep up with everybody, particularly those older folks who may live alone. Be mindful of those folks in our congregation, in your neighborhood, and in our community. Please also be mindful of those who are still on the front lines, offering care, medical care, to those in the greatest need. And let's continue to be mindful of those who are suffering because of lack of basic necessities such as food. And we continue our Saturday gatherings of food collections this Saturday the 23rd and again on the 30th of May. So please keep that in mind, and we'll tell you more about that as we get closer to those dates. We're gathering, the missions team is gathering from 11 to 1 at the church. You can drive by and bring your collections and your contributions of food. So please keep these in mind as we stay put, stay connected, stay calm, and stay patient. And like the Israelites, trusting in God's providence every day, every hour, trusting that God will lead us even as we journey through this wilderness time. God bless you, and keep the faith.